coal miner's daughter from Butcher Hollow, Kentucky. 24 #1 singles, 18 Grammy nominations, 3 Grammy Awards, member of the Grand Ole Opry, member of the Country Music and Songwriters Halls of Fame, and recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2013. Now I'm going to start in a unique way on this video with a personal observation. Of all the singers in country music history whose biography I have read, I would say that Loretta Lynn has the most unbelievable story of all. She was poor, backwards, naive, and ignorant as a child and young adult. Those are all her words, not mine. If you would have dropped me in Loretta's life when she was 4 or 14 or even 24, I would have never thought in 100 years that this lady would ever become the queen of country music. If you don't believe me, well, I've been reading her autobiography, Coal Miner's Daughter, and here's what she had to say about herself and her upbringing in the small town of Butcher Hollow, Kentucky. I'm always making Butcher Holler sound like the most backwards part of the United States, and I think maybe it is. I've traveled all over this country, and I ain't never seen anything like it. And I ain't making fun of it, because I'm the most backward person you ever saw. I never knew where babies came from until it happened to me. Now that's part of her opening for her autobiography. Now usually when I do these videos about the life of our country heroes, I start with the stories about their childhood and upbringing because I want to know who they were before they became famous. We all see the glitz and the glamour and the stardom, but I want to know who they were deep inside. But then I usually get into their famous years pretty quickly because, well, most of us don't watch YouTube videos about normal everyday people. We want to know about people who became more than ourselves. We want to know about our heroes and those we looked up to. But with Loretta, I'm going to spend a bit more time on her childhood. Why? Because she spent almost half of her book talking about Butcher Hollow and her childhood years. She calls Butcher Hollow the most important part of her life. She writes a great deal about life in Kentucky and about her mama and her daddy and about her husband and about having kids so early. Without Butcher Hollow, there never would have been Loretta Lynn, the queen of country music. And so we begin with a childhood story of Loretta Lynn. Loretta was born as Loretta Webb in 1932 in Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, the second oldest of 8 children. She grew up mostly with brothers because her first sister wasn't born until Loretta was 11. Now Butcher Holler, as she calls it, was what you might expect of rural Kentucky in the 1930s. There were no roads or cars or electricity or plumbing at her house. Loretta was 12 years old before she ever rode in a car. She says she has relatives around who have never been further than 10 miles away from Butcher Hollow their entire lives. That's just the way it was. Loretta grew up in a 1-bedroom log cabin. There was so much space between the logs in that cabin that the wind whistled through them. So her mom would tear out pages of the Sears and Roebuck catalog and stuff them between the logs. Loretta wore flour sacks that her mom sewed together until she was 7. That's when someone from the government came and gave her a brand new store-bought dress. Loretta truly thought she was the richest person in the world when she wore that new dress. For weeks on end, the family would eat bread dipped in flour and water, mixed together to make some type of gravy. Occasionally, they would save up and have what they called coal miner's steak. It was bologna. Now, when she was about 11, the family saved up enough money to buy a 4-room house on the top of a hill. For the first time, Loretta got to sleep in a bed instead of on the floor. Hi, and thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, will you like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel? That goes such a long way in YouTube promoting these videos and other people learning about the stories and history of country music. And then I've got something new for you. How about some free bonus content? We're talking things like the top 5 most popular videos on this YouTube channel, behind the scenes footage such as the books I'm reading now, and maybe even a sneak peek into what's coming next. All this for absolutely free. To get it, all you have to do is sign up to the email list, and you can find the link in the description of the video below. It is bonus.stories of country music. All right, back to the video. Since her daddy worked the night shift in the coal mines, she would sleep in Mama's and Daddy's room until she got married. And speaking of her daddy, Melvin, well, he was a coal miner, just as the song says. He stood about 5'8" and weighed 117 pounds. Loretta remembers this because when she was 7 months pregnant, they both stood on a scale at the train station and they weighed the same, 117 pounds. Every afternoon, Melvin headed underground to the coal mines, not coming home until late at night. If Loretta was still up when he got home, all she could see of him was the whites of his eyes. The rest of him was black as coal dust. The same coal dust that was causing black lung disease in thousands of coal miners, even though executives kept insisting it was safe. Working in the coal mines would eventually kill her daddy, she says, with him dying of a stroke at the young age of 51. As Loretta writes, Daddy kept the family alive by breaking down his own body. Now, growing up, Loretta was a feisty girl. She fought all the time with her brothers, sometimes just for the fun of it. Sometimes there wasn't a lot to do around Butcher Hollow, so you were just mean, she says, to keep from being bored. But not to worry, Loretta took as good as she gave, and Loretta would carry that feistiness and mischievousness well into her adult years, as you can tell by some of her more famous songs like Fist City and You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man. Now, some people think Loretta couldn't read or write. Well, she could, just not all that well. You see, even in a poor place like Butcher Hollow, there were still the haves and the have-nots. Those that had, like the kids from the coal mining camp, well, they went to a regular school that had a teacher for every grade. But not Butcher Hollow kids, and not Loretta. Loretta went to a one-room schoolhouse until she was in the 8th grade, because that's as far as the school went. And even the 8th grade in Butcher Hollow wasn't really the 8th grade. It was really the 4th grade by normal standards. So while Loretta could write and read, she was never really good at either. Anytime she did write, like when she wrote thank you notes to the radio disc jockeys, people would say that she was making up her own language. And she would say, well, that's exactly right. I'm talking Butcher Hollow, and I'm okay with that. Now, as far as music goes, Loretta would sing around the house, but the only songs she knew were the local folk songs and the spirituals they sang at church. Loretta's family never had a radio until she was 11. Even then, they didn't listen much because her dad wanted to save the battery so they could listen to the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday nights. And that's how Loretta grew up. Poor, naive, and uneducated. But Loretta wasn't going to stay a child for long. When she was just a young teenager, she was going to meet a man at a local pie social, and while neither of them knew it at the time, together they would turn Loretta into the queen of country music. And I'll be making a video on that very soon, but that's a story for another day.